Ooh, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Conversations Cafe. I am your host, Carl Evans, Senior Director of Operations at Hope for the Day, and it is my pleasure to bring to you this episode titled Sip of Hope. We are looking forward into the 2021 New Year, talking about Sip of Hope Coffee Shop. And for those of you who may not recall or may not be familiar yet and are new to the Hope for the Day world, Sip of Hope is a coffee shop based in Logan Square neighborhood of Chicago, Illinois. In May of 2018, Hope for the Day, the organization, opened this shop as an LLC we control, and it became the flagship vision of outreach for us, a place to normalize conversations on mental health and create and hold a safe space for people to come together and connect communities on the different intersections of mental health in our lives. Since its opening, we've served more than 90,000 customers. We've distributed more than 60,000 resources on mental health, and we have held any number of different events and live engagements and brought the ability to connect people with direct free education that Hope for the Day provides, all through this platform of a coffee shop that is the first in the world where 100% of the proceeds go to serve suicide prevention and mental health education, which is, of course, Hope for the Day's programming. And when we talk about the proactive suicide prevention vision, this is really about starting conversations before they adversely impact our lives. It's about creating strategies and tools to disrupt the highest risk factors for suicide and mental health crisis. And this all starts with a conversations that we're not having due to the largest obstacles around stigma, the things that force us to not talk about mental health, not make it normalized and visible in our communities, and shapes our attitudes and dysfunctional institutional responses, and largely makes us reactive to mental health. Sip of Hope as an outreach vision was a way to sort of bring this conversation on mental health into our every single day in lives in a way that it's not about just waiting till we're at a point of crisis for us to start to talk and evaluate and embrace taking care of ourselves and responding to our mental health challenges. And we had the honor of having this very large community project that Hope for the Day put together be hoisted up by a number of great supporters, donors, and other groups and entities that basically helped us lay the groundwork. And for a very long time, Sip of Hope served a wonderful product of Dark Matter Coffee, a Chicago-based company here that had been a great partner in prevention for us. But as Hope for the Day's vision and Sip of Hope grow to serve our community in the Chicagoland area and beyond, we knew that we needed to make sure that Sip of Hope as an entity could stand on its own two legs. And this past World Mental Health Day, we were very proud to announce through the hard work and dedication of our team that Sip of Hope Community Coffee Roasters Program would be launched. And what that means in simple language is that we're going to be roasting our own beans, securing our own resources, and using them as the point of sale in Sip of Hope Coffee Store and online through online bags and beans that you can purchase. And what this represents is a way of sustaining autonomy, of creating the same ethical practices that we enjoyed while working with Dark Matter, but now under entirely exclusively inside of the Sip of Hope brand. And this is just part of the maturity, part of the next evolution for us as we move into the 2021 year and beyond. So tonight's episode is really talking about Sip of Hope, celebrating both what we've been able to do and really spending a lot of time tonight focusing on where we're going. So our guests are all shaped around people who have been instrumental in the Sip of Hope experience and folks who are helping us carry on the mission into the new year and into its next state of being as we bring the Sip of Hope Community Coffee Roasters program to full maturity into the new year. So I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. Sip of Hope, of course, is another way to talk about mental health, but Conversations Cafe is a place where we hope to continue to bring these conversations on mental health, different intersections to you. And as you're familiar with the show, what we're going to do first is introduce all of our guests on, and then we're going to have them introduce themselves, and we're going to just get right into things. So first, I want to make sure we can see and hear our guests tonight. First, we got BK. Can we see you? Can we hear you? BK, come on down. BK, thank you for joining us. There you are. All right. Next up, we're going to be looking at Erin. Can we see you? Can we hear you?
Hello.
There you are. Hi, Erin. Next up, we've got Becca. Becca, can we see you? Can we hear you?
Hello.
And next up is Andy. Can we see you? Can we hear you?
Hello.
There you are, Andy. Well, we see a promotion for you, but and I see you in person. Great. So first off, for our wonderful guests who are joining us tonight, let's do a quick round of introductions. For some of our audience, there's some familiar faces here, but let's just treat everyone as your first-time guests. So BK, what you about, sir?
My name is Brian Kmiecik, and I'm the general manager at Sip of Hope Community Coffee Bar in Chicago.
Thanks for joining us, BK. Brian, of course, if you didn't catch that. Erin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Erin Dunbar, and I was a barista at Sip of Hope all the way up till quarantine, and was there when we first opened.
Yippee-ki-yay, thank you for joining us. Becca, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Becca. I am the marketing and events coordinator or director for Hope for the Day.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us, Becca. And Andy.
My name's Andy, and I'm the lead roaster for Sip of Hope Community Coffee Roasters.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, you all, for joining us. And this is really about focusing on Sip of Hope, its role inside of the greater Hope for the Day organization mission and strategic plan is, one, yes, it helps stabilize a funding revenue stream, but I talked about right off at the beginning that it's our flagship form of outreach. It's a place that connects community. Really, it's a front line for people to experience normalized conversations on mental health. So first, I kind of want to pick on Erin and Becca a little bit here and talk about, you're very much, Becca, you've come from the role of creating different sorts of events and engagements that are built with SIP as the home base of it, as a place. And Erin, obviously, as a frontline barista, you're engaging the customers on a day-to-day basis. There's the first timers who come in on a week-to-week schedule, and then there's, of course, the regulars, as we've built and had the privilege of having over the months. So could you first, Erin, could you sort of fill us in a little bit about the day-to-day experience at SIP and sort of that sort of culture and community that came to be built organically over the last 2 years?
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, we have lots of new people that have heard about us and came in to visit. And then we would also have lots of regulars that would come in, and all of the baristas from the beginning were really like open and cheerful and really down with the cause. And that just made it a really good place to work. And I think that like comes across to the clients as well.
And could you elaborate a little bit more on that, Erin? When we talk about baristas, we want to respect, the employment challenges for anyone in any sort of business and any sort of coffee shop in the world. There's going to be high stresses and different things going on. But working in Sip of Hope, what were the sort of things you found unique about the training and staffing experience?
Yeah, so we were trained in the things we don't say, and several hours of the Hope for the Day training. So we were very well versed in being able to talk to people about mental health and, what to do if there is a crisis, in the store, or that it might affect other people who do come in. And I think it also, because all the baristas had that and they were interested in the cause in the first place, it just made it really easy to talk to each other too. So I think that Brian being a really open manager and all of the baristas being really open with each other about how they're feeling, all of that just kind of lends itself to a really nice working environment and a cafe.
Thank you for bringing that in, because I think it's important we understand, Sip of Hope is not a drop-in center. It's not offering direct services, but that doesn't change the fact that when people walk into that space or engage with that space, it could be one of the first times they're actually talking openly about mental health or being engaged with the topic, because there's so much stigma that keeps us silent in the day-to-day world. And Becca, as part of your responsibilities, you're putting on the responsibilities of sort of managing our day-to-day events and things that are happening at Hope for the Day Direct, but you also have the joy of getting to intersect with activities and functions that are housed out of Sip of Hope, or we include. One of the things that you often see a lot is the social media level of Sip of Hope, where there's people who are connecting, not just walking in the store day to day, but you would have a pretty good impression of the way Sip of Hope impacts people who may not even had a chance to be at the store yet. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that, and just your perspective on Sip of Hope from your role of having to engage with it from time to time.
Yeah. So I would say one of the coolest things that I've seen is having seen somebody comment or message after one of our posts and say, I lived, and this obviously a little bit more pre-COVID times, but say, I wish that I lived closer. I live in this state so far away. I would love to come visit someday. And then eventually you see that same person tag us in a photo. And they actually did end up making it out there and got to try the coffee or got to pick up some merchandise or something, or talk to the baristas, or just see the art on the walls, or experience the feeling of being in the shop, and get that positive feedback and kind of see the journey come full circle. So that's definitely cool to see. But also just when we were able to have a shop full of people and just coming, I spent a lot of time at the shop, whether I was working for Hope for the Day or working on stuff event-wise for Sip of Hope or something like that. I spent a lot of time there because I love the shop. I love all the baristas and everything else. And there's just such a homey energy, and it's just so nice to be in the shop and everything else. So it's really great to see us come all the way to where we are now, even in COVID times, seeing the people that have come up to the walk-up window and have still been bringing their dogs that Brian recognizes when I happen to be there. And he knows all the dogs, or he knows the kids or stuff like that. And then the excitement when we were able to open up the doors, and even just letting people walk through now. It's just really cool to see how much of a community we've been able to build out of the shop there, and seeing it come all the way together from my internship to now, starting with the idea of it has just been so cool. So
thank you so much, Becca. And that's a really good point to bring up now. So we opened in 2018, and in the brick and mortar sense, we were having customers in and enjoying, and like so many other organizations and people and businesses and community spaces, the pandemic has changed and thrown our world upside down. And Brian, when we first opened, you were kicking ass, leading a great team of baristas on a very successful endeavor through a normal or the before times. And then boom, here you're the general manager, like lots of other general managers and people who are responsible for managing things that catered and responded to the public, and the pandemic hits. And I'd really like to sort of get your insights about the adjustments we had to make and the way we were able to sort of find resilience and staying durable and what are the challenges of trying to keep the Sip of Hope experience going, especially when, quite frankly, it seems that Sip of Hope, when we talk about statistically the amount of individuals who find their mental health impacted by COVID from a sense of anxiety, stress, depressive-like symptoms, Sip, if it was, we felt always necessary, Sip adds an even more sense of necessity in these uncertain times. Walk us through a little bit of what, from the day we decided we had to close down doors, but we were going to reopen at Walk Up. Walk us through what the challenges in that process has been like, if you can.
Yeah. I mean, even day one, right off the get-go, was extremely difficult. There was a lot of uncertainty, and from a management standpoint, you're certainly worried about your staff members and how this is going to impact them. And then there's the whole aspect of safety, which is a whole nother game where you're worried about the safety of and health of your staff, on top of your friends and your family. And so that was certainly a stressful situation. And I remember going outside to lock the front door. And just as I was getting ready to lock the front door, hypothetically, we thought maybe for 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the most, someone came in and I was like, I'm so sorry, we just shut everything down. And then I realized that he was in tears, and it was someone that in the moment had been informed by their, job that they were being let go due to COVID and the shutdown. And the first instinct they had was go straight to Sip of Hope, which kind of was like, it kind of reinvigorated me, and a lot of the worry kind of shifted into like, how can we continue to make an impact with Sip of Hope, because people are certainly going to be struggling and are struggling. And, for a while we were shipping just coffee beans and merchandise, trying to keep things going. And sometimes we would throw like a little handwritten message on the boxes or just a thank you. And we were really, really well supported all over the country. I mean, we shipped boxes probably every state. I don't think we got anything to Hawaii, but California to New York, Texas, all over the place. Now we've got this line inside, but when the weather was nice, we had a little walk-up window once things kind of settled down. And the reaction that we got from people who now could stop by and kind of bring back a little bit of sense of normalcy was so wonderful that even with a mask on, like you could tell that people were smiling when they came up to the window and were excited to see you. But it's been difficult. I mean, one of the biggest, one of the best features of Sip of Hope is the kind of personal connection that we're able to make with people, even if it's just in a real quick coffee purchase interaction. And it's difficult to feel that sense of connection. I mean, now, when your face is covered up like this and there's a piece of plexiglass separating you, and so you're kind of both shouting at each other, trying to figure out what the other person is saying. But I think just continue to be, like a beacon of hope for the community, and a sense of normalcy for people, whether it's just a weekend treat or it's, something that they can come into and get a cup of coffee every morning. It's been hard, but, fortunately, with the support of the community around us and all over, we're still here and we're still trying to make an impact.
And that's so critical. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the culture and community that we need to continue to reinforce, especially going into the new year, and understanding that we're not necessarily going to be escaped from the COVID cloud of uncertainty, what we can do and what we look forward to doing to try to maintain and create a positive experience. But part of the things that will help supply us and equip us to carry out that mission and try to move forward is the fact that we have now moved into providing and roasting our own supply of beans, where we had the kindness and support of Dark Matter Coffee in the beginning. Now moving over to our own brand and line is, again, as I mentioned at the start, about sustainability and about durability and autonomy and being able to stand up on our own 2 feet after having the kindness and support of all sorts of different community partners. Because Hope for the Day as an organization and Sip of Hope as an extension of the organization, we're not an island. But it's important that we always look for ways to give ourselves the best sort of footing, so that we're never in a position where we find ourselves beholden to inconsistencies or the fates of other people. We want to be able to determine our own course. And so the roasting program was an essential part of that. And Andy here is part of that growing new element in this whole Hope for the Day apparatus. And so Sip of Hope as an extension of outreach and the roasting program as a real engine of that Sip of Hope experience. I want to bring Andy in here because let's talk about, for our audience, let's first talk about exactly what the heck we mean by roasting. What are we actually doing? Did we just go out and start a crop somewhere and we've got some people who who have a Hope for the Day shirt on and they're going out and picking up beans? Or what does it mean when we talk about being a community roaster? What is the, could you sort of illustrate that for us a little bit? Before we talk about the process and the facilities and everything, just sort of illustrate for us what do we mean by this roasting program, Andy? And first, before you talk about it, tell us a little bit about your background.
My name's Andy Gallant. I have been in coffee for like 6 or 7 years. I owned a small cafe and roaster in Kansas City, Missouri before I came here. And we actually were big supporters of Hope for the Day as a cafe and a roaster as well. We did a coffee bag with Hope for the Day, and we did a coffee beer with Hope for the Day that was based in Kansas City. So there's a little bit of a connection there. As far as roasting, Sip of Hope is kind of joining the world coffee supply chain, which means that we are now, instead of receiving our roasted coffee beans from another coffee roaster, we're receiving them from source. So we receive our coffee beans through an importer that's based out of Washington called San Cristobal. Those beans are grown in Western Mexico and Nayarit. And we were very intentional about selecting some coffee areas, coffee farms, coffee communities to work with that would be long-term partners to our project with coffee. So that was very intentional. And as roasters, we receive those beans and we roast them for you, and we get them over to Brian. He serves them out in Logan Square, and yeah.
So, and this is a part I think it's really important, if you're a coffee shop, and this isn't sort of like throwing shade or anything, but when you're a coffee shop of a certain scale, you sort of buy a wholesale thing and it could go into your own personal package and that's all good and fine. What we're doing is a level above that. When you talk about source, we are going directly to the farm, as you've illustrated. And it's important just for our peace of mind and for our audience and for us to stand by. Yes, we say it, in the packaging, but when we talk about going to a farm, let's be honest, there's people out there who know like that can mean there's shenanigans about, like, you're going to a farm, but you're actually like, you're perpetuating inequalities and social injustice in the agricultural world in countries that maybe are less developed. And let's not dance around that. I think it's important for us that we could have went a route that could have put us into that sort of cycle and been like, yeah, whatever, it's not our problem. Is that, what have we done when we talk about with these farms? How do we know we're not just blowing smoke up people's butts? You know what I'm saying?
So when it comes to importing coffee, there's kind of, you get a bunch of coffee samples every couple of months, every season, every harvest. You sample all of those coffees, pick your favorites, and then you buy them through a centralized wholesaler in the United States, who is a massive importer that imports coffee all the way around the world to here. So every single time you buy coffee, it could be from a different place, it could be from a different farm. So that's kind of a very specialty oriented mentality around coffee, to buy the best coffee, your favorite coffee, the most flavorful coffee. Unfortunately, that has kind of created this massive world market for coffee that's all about driving the cost of coffee down as low as possible. So we were very intentional in the early stages of planning for Sip of Hope to find a coffee community that's based somewhere in the world, whose coffee we liked, but even more importantly than the coffee that we liked, the people that we were communicating from that source. And after 2 Zoom calls with Jacob Frankel, who is kind of the lead for us at San Cristobal, who's based out of importing coffee from Nayarit, Mexico, and just actually having real long conversations with him, a lot of them not even really about coffee, just about life, we felt extremely connected to them. And we kind of found some irony in that his background was in working in mental health with the state of Minnesota before he got into coffee importing. So sorry,
That's
that was
excellent.
long-winded, but that's
great. And again, that's something where there's a lot of parts that are out of people's control, but trying to do the due diligence to make sure that we're not being a part of a facet where we're benefiting, or we are profiting from putting other folks in debt, into some sort of debt chain of inequality, and contributing to that is important for us. Even if we could wash our hands of it, given our scale, I think it's important that our audience understands that, trying to do the due diligence to make sure that we're a part of at least some level of, trying to make sure we're part of the ethical side of this is important. And so that's the good technical side of these things, and doing that part. Let's also now talk about roasting. When people hear roasting and coffee, there's a lot of people who probably get it like, oh yeah, something happens to the beans. But I thought we could sort of talk about, Erin, you went on a little bit of a field trip to the roasting process. And since this is in the very early proto stages, we don't have all the fancy industrial gimmicks set up and the posters and the paint jobs done, but you were able to see where our proto, stage 1, facility of action is. So Erin and Andy, sort of walk us through a little bit of what we're seeing. We've got a little bit of B-roll coming up. So there's the bag, and that's when you walk into Sip of Hope, or you go online to Sip of Hope, you can order the bag right away, or you're buying the bags in store. But in order to get it into the bag, once it's out of the farm and in these great sacks, what are we looking at, Andy, here from this process? You get the bag, and now what?
okay. So this is raw green coffee from Mexico that was imported via San Cristobal to us, and we are blending together the conversation starter there. It actually has four different coffees in it combined together. So this is probably the drying stage of the roast, and
And what is this big old sucker? Pause the video a little bit for a second. What's this big old green sucker we're looking at here?
This is the roaster that we're using currently. It's a 23 kilo US roaster, core roaster.
It's a big old machine. All right, because to me, I'm not I treat me like a layman's, and I just see a big old wang dang doodle. But so this is the actual roaster, and what is that big green thing doing? Is it setting stuff on fire? Is it washing stuff? What is it? What are we doing?
So there's a steel drum there basically that's filled with beans, and those beans are tumbling inside of it as heat is applied to it. That heat is being transferred to the raw coffee bean, and it is drying out and then caramelizing into what we associate with coffee.
Okay, so once it's gone through that whole process, that makes it ready to get like crushed and put into bag and turn into delicious drip, correct?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
espresso or what have you.
that's when the coffee goes over to BK and he works his magic on it.
So Erin, as we can see in the video here, you got to sort of roll through. And first thing I want to know is like, what did it smell like?
Well, actually, when we were smelling it, he kind of, you saw him kind of take out that little scooper,
Yeah.
so he can, you know, make sure it's where he wants it to be before the next step. It smelled like cookie dough, which is really yummy. So yeah, like it kind of smells differently as the process goes on, which is cool.
And so, you know, our facility, we didn't really do like a full, like I said before, this is our proto facility. So, you know, we don't have all the bells and whistles, but Erin, walking through it, you know, given the volume that we're doing and hope to continue to grow to do, what was just sort of your general intake of sort of Andy's setup there?
It's cool, you know, like it's such a good start to our new process. And yeah, it's like all the way out in Aurora, but you know, a nice commute for Andy, real close. And yeah, it's just like there's all the beans are there. There's just like that simple machine, and you know, it makes it doable, which is so great.
Super. And so, you know, before we wrap this up a little bit, I wanted to sort of touch with everyone on a few things. But one of the things I wanted to bring up, just as this process takes on its own shape and gets solidified in terms of the roasting program, and hopefully there's sort of new autonomy with Sip of Hope. Some of the exciting things is an enhanced digital presence for Sip of Hope in the bag, and being able to get out more and more supply to people who aren't just in Chicago. And there's a lot of more digital tools in there. One of them happens to be this thing called Track Your Coffee, which is more connected to about the ethical supply thing. And I thought it'd be a good thing to bring up, Andy. Could you walk us through that a little bit? What does that mean?
So, Track Your Coffee is a QR-based, code-based website that allows, so at farm level, for them to attach a tag to the coffee bag. That tag contains a QR code that leads to a link online that tells us basically endless amounts of information about which coffee farmers grew it, which coffee farmers processed it, which part of the landscape it came from, what varietal of coffee it is. It allows us to have a more sustainable connection with the coffee farmers and more accuracy to create a more consistent product, especially.
It's so crazy. Like I'm looking at it on my phone. It has a picture of the place. It'll tell you the altitude. It'll tell you when this place was founded. But then it also tells you about the soils and the processing, and it's really wild.
And that's
a creation of Jacob as well, who's our lead over at San Cristobal. He designed that system himself because he saw a problem where they were getting inaccurate information about coffees. So this is a way to keep like track of everything, which creates a more fair connection with the farmers for growing their brand and their product.
And I wanted to bring that up because that's on the end of sort of on the supply side end. We continue to want to work to enhance and refine the Sip of Hope experience for folks. And I want to bring BK and Becca back into this. And really all of you, you know, we're sort of we want to finish strong in this year. And we also want to continue to build and grow into the new year. And so Becca, you know, as we're sort of coming, you know, Thanksgiving is coming up, and then there's Giving Tuesday. Wanted to know, since you oversee a lot of our communications, what are your thoughts on, you know, Sip of Hope, sending Sip of Hope as a sort of a holiday note or positive note would be a great way of supporting Hope for the Day. It might be a great opportunity for folks to connect with their family members since travel may not be in the plans and stuff. And just sort of, what are your thoughts on like those other things people can do to get a bit of Sip of Hope in their lives?
Yeah. So I'm always all about gifting coffee. So even from back when we were doing the dark matter coffee, the year before, or the fundraiser that we did to raise money to open the coffee shop, one of the things that we did around that was doing a bag of the coffee with a mug that had the logo and stuff on it as a gift package. I think that I bought probably 4 of those and gave them to like most of my family members for Christmas. I was just like, check, that's done. Like coffee and a coffee mug. It's a perfect way to start your morning. And every time that you make your coffee, you're going to be like, oh, what a nice gift that she got me. So that's like one of my favorite things. So we're definitely planning to bring those back again, like the little gift boxes. And we're hoping to do a couple different ways that you could like do merch, or you could gift somebody a subscription, or a mug and a bag of coffee, stuff like that. I love the subscription option too, that you can, I gifted a subscription from my brother. I let him try the coffee once and he was like, I've been drinking this every day. So I got him a subscription, and he's going to get a bag and get it shipped off to him so that he doesn't even have to think about it. So
is that something that's available right now?
Yeah, you can definitely get subscriptions on our website. And Andy roasts every Monday. Maybe I'm incorrect.
Yes. Sorry, I had
Monday. No, you're good. Every Monday. Yes, I was correct. So with the subscription, you're getting fresh coffee every week. So it's never going to be like it was sitting there on the shelf. He's shipping it straight out of where we're roasting from. So it's like super fresh. You open that bag and Erin's exactly right. Nice, sweet with a coffee every time.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And BK, one of the things that we hear a lot is individuals and families and community, they love it, and we can send them to the website. But quite frequently, we hear from people like, "Oh, I run a company," or whether it's I run an auto shop, or I'm in a corporate space, and man, I really love that here, or I'd love to serve it, to our staff team. Is there a way that people can, do people just buy X amount of our traditional bag, or is there a way that we can do direct business? If somebody wants to talk about that idea, like, is that possible for Sip of Hope right now?
Definitely. We're just getting into that phase now. We do have wholesale opportunities, as well as 5-pound bags that will be available eventually on our website. If 12 ounces isn't enough for you, we'll ship you a big boy.
I mean, we're happy when people, you certainly see them, the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 orders of our packages. But so, we were just seeing on the screen there, is that when you see the wholesale tab, is that for people who maybe want to try and bring a larger quantity, or discuss bringing a larger quantity into their own community space, whether it's a government place, a park, a library, company, et cetera? Is that what people should go to?
Yeah, if you're in an office setting and you brew coffee, or you're just an auto shop and you brew coffee inside the office, just reach out to us, and we can definitely make something happen so you can keep serving our good beans at your shop.
Great, and that is of course on the website. So as we're sort of winding down here, because this has been such a challenging and unique experience, and we would hope that this is a one-off, more or less speaking, and that as we we're getting our footing in the realities of the current pandemic situation, we hope that the pandemic will be relieved through medical advances and things like that. But we're still getting ready to be prepared for life as it is. So I'd like to just hear from all of you, sort of what are your aspirations and things you're looking forward to in relationship to Sip of Hope. And that can be across the board. That doesn't necessarily have to be something that is in reality yet, but just sort of some closing notes that you might have. I'll start with Andy, newest to the team, as it were. What are you sort of looking forward to?
I'm really passionate about the coffee in Mexico. Clearly, it was a big thing for me. I've always, as a former coffee buyer for another company, and I own my own coffee roaster, I've always wanted to buy coffee this way because I've always believed that it's more ethical. and it's more relationship driven. And this project has really enabled me to make that happen.
And to that point, there's got to be something said for the quality too, right? I mean, how do we know we're getting like a tasty cup in there? Is that really going to be something that we know from the farming to the roasting? That's something that we can be assured through the careful process you're putting together? Or?
So when the process started, I encountered the coffee from Nayarit through another coffee that I just had. And then I looked them up, reached out to the importers. They sent me samples. That's where we really started to go, wow, this is really good. I really like this. Mexico traditionally has been kind of stigmatized in the coffee world as not being like one of the sexy coffee places in the world that puts out like incredible coffee. Their coffee is more like for espresso blends and stuff like that. So I actually really enjoyed being behind kind of an underdog in the coffee world. So that was another kind of reason that I wanted to go with this. I mean, it's just great coffee, but it really all comes back down to the people that we've interacted with through San Cristobal, and just really, really great people that we know are going to treat farmers correctly. And we know that because we have a relationship with them, not because there's some, corporate program dedicated to blah, 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 blah. And there's really no way to know if that's actually doing anything great or not,
That's perfect. Couldn't have said it better. Thank you so much. Becca, what do you got in your mind?
I'm really excited to just continue to see how the shop grows and changes, and some of the other tricks we have up our sleeve that you guys will be seeing shortly. I'm really excited to test those out. But just seeing, in general, seeing it grow, like I said, from the time that I started my internship and we first started thinking about Sip of Hope to fundraising to opening the shop, and then the coffee and the 1 year, and then having the 2 year, and then doing, seeing our community really like thrive behind us to help us stay open after we got shut down. And seeing how many people were really touched by that and wanted to have a part of it. And then to where we are now roasting our own coffee so that we know that it's ethical and that we can actually say more so no matter where you're buying it from, that 100% of it's coming back to support our education. That's so exciting, and I just can't wait to see where we grow from here.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much. Erin, from your very unique perspective, seeing on the front lines and seeing the community hands on a day-to-day basis, what are your sort of thoughts as we sort of move into the new year?
I agree with both of them so far. I'm really excited to see, where else we can go, but also just to get back to work eventually and learn more about roasting, like the fact that is something that, we can really have like our hands on now is so exciting. So, yeah.
Super. Thank you so much. And Brian, last but not least, what are you looking forward to?
Just kind of seeing where this new venture takes us. It feels like we started a new business again. Like 2 years ago when we were getting Sip of Hope ready, we were starting a new business. And then now putting out these beans that are roasted by us. It feels like we started another business, just a little bit bigger. And so I'm just excited to see where that goes. If there have been people following our story that maybe have their own cafe or small community center, mental health clinic, they can purchase our beans in wholesale large amounts, and the bags come with resources on them. So, we're not only are we putting out, a great cup of coffee, but we're also sending out resources that people can use, which certainly in this time is very, very important.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. As we're sort of wrapping up here, it's important for you who are listening and watching right now or in days and weeks after the fact. Each one of our guests today represent part of the bigger team that makes something like Sip of Hope a reality. Andy is the newest member of the roasting program, which builds directly into our core foundation of stability. BK, who has been the pillar of making Sip of Hope a reliable and durable business model. Erin, who has been on the front line and represents for all the different unique and wonderful human beings who we've had the honor of calling baristas, and their different and phenomenal experiences and perspectives that have come to the shop as we've grown, gotten better, refined, and learned how to be the best we can be, because we're never going to pretend that this is about, when people say, well, we're not trying to be perfect. Well, that's this is really always trying to find the best you can be, and starting from the foot of trying to figure out what that is on a day-to-day basis. And learning helps when you start to listen to people and start to have these conversations. And the internal parts of our organization only get better when we have the insights from BK, and we learn from Andy, and we learn from people like Erin who can share and speak up. And the fact is that Becca, for those of you who don't know, there's a lot of parts of the Hope of the Day team. When you think of Sip of Hope, we talk about it as a front line because you see the baristas, you see BK, you're seeing those people, but the team and the army behind Hope of the Day, a lot of us are in offices and behind computers doing the hard work, hours in and hours out. And so a lot of the phenomenal things that you see, the immaculate curation of our website and social media is overseen by Becca. For a lot of you who don't know, that's, and Becca represents a team of people who kick ass on the regs to what you might think is like, oh, it's pretty easy to do social media, or pretty easy to send out a newsletter, or pretty easy to handle the day-to-day. But let me tell you, my friends, like, that's a monstrous responsibility. And just like everyone you see on screen right now, we all take on different roles, and it's important that we acknowledge Becca's contributions into making this whole world go round for us. And why I bring all this up is because you watching right now and listening right now, you're also a part of that team and a part of this family. Your engagement, whether you are securing a cup of coffee on the daily, getting a bag, or making a donation, or following, liking, and sharing with us, you are part of the proactive prevention theory. You are part of trying to make a change, because prevention starts with a conversation that our communities are not having. Sip of Hope as a flagship outreach is not a marketing concept. It is a durable, concrete, tangible element in this war to try to reduce suicide rates, try to reduce people's entering stages of crisis, because we do not talk about mental health. We do not talk about resources. We do not talk about suicide prevention. We don't talk about lifelines. We don't talk about wellness until mental health blows up in our faces. And this pandemic has been a brutal and violent reminder of that, because there are people who never really thought about mental health on a day-to-day basis, who are finding their lives dramatically crippled by the uncertainties, the anxieties, and the depression of having their agency taken away, not being able to define what they want to do on a day-to-day basis. Even though they may never have the criteria for a diagnosable mental illness, they're still experiencing depressions and anxieties and uncertainties. And that is mental health. That is mental health. We are all impacted. And that might seem common sense to our long-term friends and family of the Hope of the Day team. Of course, we're all mental health, but there's a lot of people who, because of stigmas, never made the correlation that if they didn't have psychosis, if they didn't have some pre-existing, already diagnosed experience, mental health wasn't for them. That wasn't a topic that was relevant. They could just live the day-to-day life and they were normal. But normal is a setting on a washing machine. And the brutal, unfortunate silver lining with COVID, because it's not to be joked about, it's not to be made light of, is the fact that people are coming face to face with their mental health. And for people who have already been challenging their mental health, it's an unfair compounding factor. And for many, many others, it's an introduction to things that maybe they had the privilege to not think about. And I'm not saying that in a judging way. What I'm trying to draw home is that now more than ever, even if mental health has always and forever been important, now more than ever, we can change the social policies on how we approach mental health. Stigma does not have to be an intangible thing that is forever here. We can break down these walls. And when we think of a thing like Sip of Hope, we are passionate about it because we don't take it lightly. those people who felt a little disheartened about Sip of Hope closing down temporarily, they're not to be dismissed. They're not to be thought of as like, oh, they're over dramatic. It created a community space where people found strength and comfort, because we often live in a world and society that enjoys making people isolated with their mental health challenges. And Sip of Hope, by its extension, with every bag, with every cup, that's not just supporting our work and programming. That cup of coffee, that bag, that mug is an opportunity to start a conversation as well, because it's so hard to talk about the things we don't say, that sometimes somebody looking at that mug that you're drinking can be the way you can open the door to a conversation that can change someone's mind in understanding about how they look at mental health. That you're not weak, you're not broken, there's not something wrong with you. You don't have to fear judgment because you find struggles with your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So as we close here tonight, I want you to understand that why Hope for the Day looks and embraces and celebrates Sip of Hope so much is that this isn't just about having a revenue stream. This is about a very serious and dedicated and concrete part of our programming. And the roasting process that we now have embedded into it helps us empower this glowing beacon to further strengthen our quest to create processes, strategies, and tools to disrupt the highest risk factors for suicide and mental health crisis. So I want to thank all of our guests tonight for joining us and for being such amazing figures and elements in that process. And I want to thank all of you, our viewers and guests tonight, for joining us and for being a part of a movement to reduce suicide rates and impact and improve the quality of lives around the world. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great night.